I wasn't thinking. I popped my usual screen name up there instead of my name.
Hey, that's fine. Whatever you want to go by is fine with us. I was going to let you introduce yourself however you wanted to. All right. We're so glad you were able to get on here with us this morning. First, I'll introduce myself and then David, and then we'll turn it over and let you, like I said, however you want to introduce yourself, whatever you want to go by today. But my name is Ashley Hill, and I'm here from Kentucky, and I'm part of the Newsom Paranormal Group that's out of down around the Ashland area, Grayson area, and we have the other host here today. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm David Hope, founder Dark Hope Paranormal, part of the P3 program, lead investigator for the Lubbock, Texas chapter of G-Crypt, and admin for a lot of other groups, But it's good to have you here this morning with us, bud.
Well, thank you.
And then just kind of tell us, like,
I didn't know you were in tech.
Yeah,
I didn't know you were in Texas. I used to live in Texas, just outside Waco.
Oh, right on.
And where are you now?
There's some cool places down there too. I'm in Michigan, just outside Detroit.
Oh, wow.
My name's Chris. Been friends with Ashley for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm not part of a group, but I used to go exploring abandoned old places, still do with friends once in a while, and I've just seen some weird stuff. Too much not to believe in there being other things out there. There are too many things that don't have explanation to not believe that there's something there.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. And that's all we're doing is just kind of talking about like experiences you've had or we've had, things that we're just kind of talking today and just telling stories and things that maybe you've seen that you can't explain, or if you want to talk about things that you heard like growing up, like things that maybe your family told you or stories, anything like that. We're interested in all that. So I know you had talked last night. You were trying to think of
most of the stuff I've come across has just been stuff I've seen. I have a friend who used to really be into going around and exploring old abandoned buildings, just because you see all kinds of cool stuff, cool old architecture, things that got left behind. And some of the places you go through, like we've gone through some old abandoned psychiatric hospitals and stuff like that, and you just see some weird stuff.
I imagine
things that there just aren't explanations for.
That's true. That's true. Are there many places like abandoned hospitals or psychiatric places stuff here where you're at now, or was it in other states that you lived in that you did that?
Well, I've done stuff when traveling, but there's a lot of cool places around Michigan, especially like if you go down into Detroit, there's old abandoned churches and cathedrals, psychiatric hospitals. Not all of them you can get into, but some of them are just abandoned buildings sitting on a public street, and it's easy to go in and explore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, Michigan's got some cool places that are more famous that, you go to once in a while. But honestly, I've probably seen more weird stuff in the places that are just old, abandoned, and empty than in the places that are big tourist attractions for being haunted and stuff.
That's the kind of stuff I like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I go to those places. Some of those places are cool, the big ones that you see on the internet and stuff. But I've seen more weird stuff in places that are just empty and abandoned and nobody there.
Right. because to me, you know, the spirits be more apt to communicate, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's like I remember one time there was a psychiatric hospital in Detroit that we went through. And you go through and you can tell nothing's been there in years. Everything's covered in dust, stuff tipped over, old gurneys and stuff like that. And yet there was this one room we went into, and there was this old greeting card that was sitting like on a patient's table. And out of everything in the place, no dust, not tipped over, not moved, just sitting there perfectly. And you could tell it was old. And it's like,
Wow.
okay, that's a little strange.
Yeah,
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
how does something sit there undisturbed for that many years? No dust, no cobwebs on it. It's just
Did you
weird.
get a picture of it? Did you get a picture, bud?
I did, but it's on an old memory card for it was years ago, so I don't have it currently, but
Yeah.
that sounds like
I mean,
you
I
would've
have
made a
it
great
somewhere
picture.
on an old memory card from a camera,
Right.
but
That's interesting though, because you're right. I mean, that doesn't really add up, does it? When things like that don't.
Right.
It kind of
no,
sticks
it's
out.
like, yeah, there's just something strange about that. Or sometimes it's just a feeling when you walk into a room, or you know, the hair standing up
Exactly.
on the back of your neck all of a sudden, or
Yeah. Have you seen any, like, did you see any kind of apparitions or any kind of movements or shadows, or have you ever seen anything, or has it just been things you've heard and felt and things?
I mean, nothing that you could say is definitive. You know, you see shadows that you think look like people, or you think you see things move.
Right.
I've never seen anything that I would call like, oh yes, I definitely saw it was, you know, some specific shape or something. It's usually more like something you catch from the corner of your eye, or something that you see, but when
Yeah.
you turn, it's not there. Or,
Yeah. Well, see, and I find this, I find your answers more honest than even, you know, some, you know, ghost hunting shows that you'll talk to, and there's like, oh, and I saw this and I saw that. And
right.
it's like a million stories. Like, I think, you know, I think you probably had a lot of experiences from what you're saying, but they've just been things that you can't explain. Kind of like, and like you
Right.
said, you weren't officially even ghost hunting. You were just kind of checking it out. And I think that happens to a whole lot of people. Don't you, David?
Heck yeah. That's
Yeah.
more or less.
I think
You know,
honestly, those are
realize now.
usually the more realistic encounters than the ones where people have all this detail. Because I mean, if it's a spirit, you're really not going to. It's not something that you're going to really see or really.
Yeah. Well, I think people do. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think they do, and I think that there are some places, like we talk a lot about, like Waverly Hills, which is down here in Louisville. It's really active. Like there are some spots that are super active that have, I think,
Right.
more strong entities, I guess you could say. And I think when you get
Right.
into
I mean, there probably are
right,
cases of that being true.
yeah,
Those just aren't the ones that you're going to hear about every day.
yes, I agree with that, and that's not the norm. I don't think. I know people that have been ghost hunting for years and years and haven't seen a full body apparition. They've just never seen that. You know,
Right.
have you seen a full body apparition, David, in any of your ghost hunts? I had never even asked you that.
No, I remember a long time ago. I must have been about 16 or 17. It was a little bit after my dad had passed away. Me and my mom had went on a little vacation thing to see one of my older brothers, and we stopped somewhere around the middle of Texas, one of them little towns, and we went in a store, and it was like an antique shop or something, you know, one of those kind of deals.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the old Western type design to it, you know. And we were going through there, and I seen a lady and a kid and clothes that would match that time period or whatever. And when we went to check out, I was telling the lady, you know, that you know, it was a really cool store that they had. And I really like how they had the people dress up. She's like, I'm the only one here. You know, and I'm
Wow.
like, wait a minute, I know what I saw,
Yeah, yeah. Well, you did then. I mean, it sounds like you might have seen something like that.
I don't know if it's because of my age at that time or what. That sticks out in my mind.
And something like that. Yeah, if you see one, it's usually probably something more like that, where it's like a person that couldn't possibly have actually been there, but it's not like you see things and you just go, "Oh yeah, that's a ghost."
Right.
Exactly.
If you see a full apparition, you probably don't realize it was until later.
Yeah. And a lot of people even, I mean, I've seen tons of pictures where people say they didn't see anything when they were actually there, but they were taking pictures and they get them home and they find like a shadow in a corner or, something like that. I think that happens even more than people seeing it in the real time, like you said, but have you, I know.
Or not realizing what they're seeing in real time.
True.
Yeah.
This is kind of a question that's similar to that, though. It's like we're talking about like whether or not you've seen a full body apparition. Have you ever been in one of those places that you were exploring and heard something? Have you ever heard like voices or noises or things that you couldn't explain or something that maybe was like anything auditory? Yeah. Okay. Like what kind of stuff? What I want to know what you heard. What'd you hear? I'm always curious about that.
Well, I mean, like. The one that stands out most probably is was up north. My family's got a place up there in northern Michigan, and there's some abandoned places up there. And we went to this one place. It was like out in the woods, way out. It was an old abandoned, like some type of mining option or something. And we were going through some of the old buildings and stuff. And I swore I heard somebody else talking, and I went and found my friend that was looking, and I was like, "Were you saying something, or have you seen anybody out here?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "Well, you're way over here. I thought I heard somebody talking." And so it was just like you heard somebody where there couldn't have been anybody there, but we didn't see anybody. It was just like, okay, I've heard something,
That's
but
what I mean.
That's pretty wild.
You can hear them, but it's kind of like muffled. You can't quite understand what's being said.
Right, like almost like somebody was off around the corner, next building over, talking or something. It's like,
right.
Yeah. I
we're
found
the only ones here.
A lot of times when it's like that though, and you can hear it with your ear, without a recorder or anything, you actually hear it like that. If you did have a recorder with you and could play it back, that was probably strong enough that you could have possibly made out what it was saying. Because I know a lot of times people with recorders, they'll pick up things with recorders that they don't hear with their ears. They don't even hear it when they're there.
Right.
It's when they play back. So like if it was strong enough that you could actually hear it, on your own, I'll be really curious if you had that on a recording, if you could have made out what it even said. That's possible, don't you think?
Possible. I mean, I've never prepped to actually go explore a place for that purpose. Like I said, it's just going to explore neat old places, and you end up seeing or hearing things like that, and it's like, well.
Mm-hmm. But see, I like talking to people though that just go and look and aren't even really ghost hunting, because they see and hear things that validate what people that are ghost hunting are saying. And it's not, you're not doing it for clout, you're not doing it for fame or anything. You're just saying, hey, here's some stuff that's happened to me. And that's why we wanted you on the show, just to kind of say, what your experiences have been. I think that's really great, Chris. And I think it adds credibility to the field, to people that are out here trying to prove things and stuff. So, I mean, I think that's great. Have you ever had anything happen?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I was going to say, have you ever had anything happen at your house or at any place you've lived? Have you ever lived anywhere that you felt had any kind of activity? And if not,
I've lived a couple of places where there's small things. I mean, nothing as big as some of the things I've seen out exploring some of the old abandoned places, but I've bought several old houses and fixed them up and flipped them, or like the house I live in now, was built in 1920.
Wow.
And occasionally you see little things, but it's usually a lot less intense than things that happen in those places.
What kind of little things
I
do
really
you
think
have happen?
I really think if things like that are around, that the ones that are attaches to places where there was something traumatic or something big that happened tend to be stronger than what you pick up just like as a shadow of somebody that lived in this house before me or something, you know.
Oh, I agree
But
definitely, and I think that homes that had like a lot of maybe domestic violence or child abuse or something tragic happened there, like a fire, or I think that when there's trauma,
our
I think that makes them more active
Right.
too. A lot of times,
Right.
right, but I mean, I think like the biggest thing, the strongest things that I've seen have been in places like the abandoned mental hospital or an old hospital that I went through, or
yeah,
searches seem to tend to have stronger things like that. It just seems like places where there were people that were in more of a desperate place tend to
yeah,
have more of those attachments,
I
and they
agree.
tend to be stronger.
You hear a lot of people say that psychiatric hospital, insane asylums, as they used to call them, and jails, a lot of the prisons and stuff that are old and abandoned
Mm.
are some of the most active places. I
I
always hear
have
people
not
say
gone
that.
through an abandoned jail yet, but it might be
Yeah.
kind of cool. I try and stay away from places with bars. I don't like being caged.
Most people do. Most
Smart
people
man.
do. Well, you said though that like some little things have happened, like in some of the homes that you've been in, the older homes and stuff. Like what kind of little things? Like is it being like what's something tiny or little that you would say has happened?
There's just like there was one house that I went to, or that I went to, fixing it up to sell it, and I understood from the neighbors that the people that had lived there were some domestic issues there and things like that. But there was this one place in the living room of that house that didn't matter what you did. There were new windows, new carpet, walls were redone, everything was redone. You could not walk through that spot in that house without getting a chill.
Really?
Oh, wow.
No matter how warm it was, no matter what time of year it was, every time you walked through that spot, it's like the hairs on your arms stood up.
Fascinating.
That is. It's really interesting. I wonder what happened there. Something might have been printed on that spot.
And it was weird because it wasn't just like in that room or anything. It was a specific spot,
Right.
in that room.
Yeah.
That every time you walked through it, just the hairs on your arms stood up, or at least mine.
Yeah. Have you ever had anything happen? I know you've worked a lot of places, warehouses and different places. Have you ever heard anybody at work tell us something that happened to them, or seen anything at a work site or anything? Because sometimes people have things even happen at work that are kind of unexplained or
I've never run into anything at work. I've talked to a couple of people who swear weird things have happened at work, but I personally have never had anything happen at any of the places I've worked.
What can you tell us, like one of the stories maybe that they've told you or said that happened to them, or what they were claiming happened?
Well, there was one place I worked where it was just a specific line that somebody said weird things would happen. The machine that was there had been there for a long time. They said things would flip on or off on the machine without explanation and things like that. I never saw any of it myself, but the people who worked that line specifically said they saw things like this.
I think there's sometimes some like electronics and things like that sometimes things do happen that are odd around times places where things have happened. I always think to ask the question about like has anything happened to you at work, because I think people leave that out sometimes when they're talking about ghost stories. They talk about your house, they talk about ghost hunting, and they don't think about where you're working at. And I guess one of the reasons I always think of it is, well, a couple things, but like this is a coal mining area where I'm at. And all the coal miners around here, almost every coal miner you talk to has got at least one story. But so many people die in the mines, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that I believe.
Yeah.
Like I said, the one I ran to up north was an old mining type facility.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think places, you know, maybe where you work, if there is a lot of, if you worked in some kind of factory where there was a lot of death or a lot of accidents and things, that might make the activity spike more or be an issue, you know? So it probably just depends on the line of work you're doing and stuff.
Right.
And also, David, I mean,
I imagine the coal mines are definitely, I did go through an old coal mine down that way once, and there is a real different feeling to walking into those places.
There really is. There really is. And but yeah, and I meant to you too, Chris was kind enough to get up early this morning to be with us. So I think I'm giving you thanks for that, Chris, because he's normally asleep right now. He usually works second shift. So he even worked his sleep schedule around being on the show.
We really appreciate it, buddy.
We appreciate you fixing extra coffee. And
not a problem,
morning, Chris. So
Death Wish is good. Death Wish will wake you up for anything.
That's Zach Wild's coffee, isn't it? Is that the one that Zach Wild does?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good coffee.
I don't know. I found it. It is. It's really good coffee. It's kind of expensive, but I like the high caffeine content, and I'm just a coffee fanatic. So.
Yeah, it's good.
Have you tried the Five Finger Death Punch coffee yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, my wife will order it. I don't know where she gets it from online, but she'll order it for me every now and then. And man, you talk about it'll kick you, huh? Oh, from Amazon. But it'll kick you and get you going.
That's usually where I buy my Death Wish, so I'll have to look and see what's on there. Maybe I'll try some.
We've got one of those. Death Wish makes there's a Viking horn coffee cup we've got over here for Death Wish. So it's good stuff. And I haven't
That's cool. I want one of those.
Punch, but I need to check that out too. So, the other thing I was going to
I like the Death Wish espresso roast.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've tried that one, but
oh wow, I'm gonna try that.
Can you think of anything, Chris, as far as like any stories like that maybe were in your family from growing up, or anything that like your mom or anybody in your family had told you, or anything that they saw, or you know anything from sometimes like in your family there'll be a story everybody in the family knows.
I know. I told you. My family has a place up north between Tawas City and Oscoda here in Michigan. And the area where the cottage is an old logging area. And there's some places up there where my grandmother used to say she had seen some stuff when she was younger. One of them, there's a place called the Pack House Restaurant up there. And they've kind of developed a reputation for being a haunted place. A lot of the encounters sound more faked nowadays or things, but I guess what it is the building that they're in used to be a boarding house for the loggers. And before it became a restaurant, it was like a little museum thing. And my grandmother had been through there, and she said she'd seen some weird things in the house before it was converted to a restaurant. And there's a lot of stories up there from employees at the restaurant when it first opened about encounters in there.
Wow.
Makes
And there's places in there even now when you walk through there, you'll get like odd feelings walking through some rooms or something. But I believe some of the older stories that came out of there, because a place like that, Loggers, a lot like Miners, there's a lot of, particularly, in the older times, there was a lot of death and misery that went along with that profession. So
Yeah.
that being a former boarding house for loggers, it kind of sounds reasonable to me that at least some of the original stories from there are probably true.
Yeah. See, that's really interesting. It is. I know where you have these cabins out in remote areas like that and everything. Have they ever told you any kind of story about anything other than maybe not a ghost, but like Bigfoot stories or any kind of cryptid stories or aliens? Or have you ever heard any other strange stories? Sorry, you guys. I got
there's not much Bigfoot.
If you keep hearing
there's
like
not
pig,
much
it's
Bigfoot.
Just say hi.
Aha.
There we go.
If you hear snorting, I don't have a pig. It's just her.
Part pug?
Yeah, she's a pug. Yeah, she's a little pug.
Yeah.
So.
Pugs do tend to have breathing problems.
Yeah, she does a little bit.
But
anyway, back to the Bigfoot stories or anything like that you can think of.
No, there really wasn't much Bigfoot up there. I know the UP gets some of those. We're not quite far that north. No, I can't really think of much like that up there. There's the state land out there. There's like a old folktale or something about supposedly if you're out there hunting on the state land, there's this huge white deer that you'll see sometimes, but I've never actually seen it.
Oh, wow.
Now, where is that at that you're talking about? What state land? Where we're at?
Up near Oscoda, Michigan. There's some state land out there, and there's a lot of hunters out there. And some of them will tell stories about this big white deer that you see when you're out hunting, but I've never actually seen anything with that.
That's interesting, though.
That's one of the local.
Yeah. I tend to think there might be something to stories like that, though, when you go local, especially hunters, because they're out there in places that nobody else goes,
Right.
And I always think it's interesting, too, that a whole lot of the stories about things like Bigfoot or certain creatures like that, like the deer you're talking about and stuff, they talk about always seeing them on the state land or state parks and stuff and reserves and things. Have you noticed that? There seems to be a big connection there.
Yeah. A lot of them do seem to be places like that.
Yeah. So who knows? There might be something to that. Does it have a name or do they just say big white deer?
I don't think that one has a name.
I just know
it's just a big plot of
things or whatever,
Right.
Right. No, that has specific farmer thing. If so, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But
anything you wanted to ask me, David, or talk about? Because I didn't think David might have questions too.
Was there any time when you were doing your exploring that really freaked you out, where you just had to get out of there? Any one place in particular you can think of?
There was one place that we just it wasn't anything major that happened, but there was a church in Detroit that me and a couple of friends went into that just felt real uneasy. We didn't run out of there or anything, but we didn't stay as long as we normally do.
Right.
It was
just that gut feeling.
Was an old Catholic church, and Yeah, we got in there and we started looking around and took pictures of a couple of things, and it was just like real nervous, anxious, just didn't feel right. And when we all started wandering around and just kind of looking at each other, we were like, yeah, not feeling it. Let's go.
Right.
Did you feel like something was watching you, or you just felt nervous and anxious more so?
It was just a real uneasy, anxious kind of feeling,
Yeah, I do know. I've been in places and had that feeling too. I mean, I think there's something to it.
Never anything that was like, oh hell, I've got to get out of here. I'm in danger.
Yeah.
But just uneasy, uncomfortable.
Right. And what validated is, everybody was feeling it, not just one person,
Right. It was like we were all just like, yeah, not so into this place. Let's go.
This is a little bit of a different question, but I was wondering, Chris, I know you've studied a lot of things about like Viking culture in the past and things of like different cultures and beliefs and stuff. Did you do anything in particular yourself when you went those places, like to protect yourself, or is that? I know people that are like Christian that do certain little things before they go into haunted places, or people that are Wiccan that do certain little things to protect themselves. Different faiths, different paths. Is there anything that you ever did, or did you just say, "Nah, I'm just go on in and not worry about it too much"?
Not anything specific. No.
Okay. I didn't know if you had a little. Some people even have like just a certain necklace they like to wear, or something that they find lucky, or a charm, or I just didn't know if there was anything. That
no, I mean I usually have a necklace that I wear all the time, but it's not like now I do a Viking hammer. I used to have the wolf's head that I wore all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's just more for all.
But it's not anything like.
Just
right. Nothing specific for. No, because like I said, usually we weren't ghost hunting. We were just going to examine old abandoned places.
Right.
Just because.
Right. Exploring.
It wasn't specifically for ghosts, though. If we heard about someplace haunted, we'd go check it out. But mostly it was just like you find old architecture and cool old stuff. And,
yeah, I love looking at antiques and things too, just old architecture, and going around checking different buildings on sites and everything. What about that? That brings to another subject. Have you ever come across any kind of an object, like a doll or a piece of furniture or clothing or old jewelry, or like some people think that there can be spirits attached to things as well? Have you ever had any experiences like that?
Yeah, there's been a couple of those.
Okay, can you tell us about some of them? Or?
Probably the weirdest one I ever saw as far as an object was I had a friend of mine when I was growing up, and I still can't necessarily attach anything to it because I was young and didn't really I was like 13, 14. And I had a friend, her dad was what do they call them? The whole secret society. I know it. It's just on the tip of my tongue, and I can't say it, of course.
A Mason?
Yes, thank you. Her father was a Mason.
Right.
And so he had very definite beliefs. And he wanted nothing to do with Ouija boards or anything like that. Well, his daughter, my friend, got a Ouija board and had been playing around with it with some of her friends. And her dad found out, and he swore up and down that those things are evil, things attach themselves to it. He didn't want anything to do with it. He grabbed it, he threw it in the fireplace. And could have just been a log pop, could have just been whatever. But he threw that thing in the fireplace, the board caught, and the planchette came flying out of the fireplace
Oh, wow.
and landed on the floor and just sat there untouched. And we were like, okay, well then.
Yeah, that's wild. Did it scare him, or what did he do?
He took the thing and got rid of it. I don't know where he took it or what he did with it. The rest of us were just like, damn.
Right.
That wasn't what we expected.
Yeah. I know some people are really scared of Ouija boards, and I think there's something to have a respect for and to be careful. I think if people don't know how to use them properly, they can be very dangerous. That's my take on it.
Right.
But I do think they can be used in the right way. I mean, it's a tool kind of like anything else, but I know there's some people that just absolutely they don't want anything to do with them. And I respect that too. If they don't want to do that, then I understand, because it is something that I think that I think it's smart to have a healthy
and that's like that's like a lot of things. If you don't do it and you don't want anything to do with it, you're right. You're probably better off leaving it alone and staying away from it. Because if it is what people portray it to be, then you want to know what you're doing with it. Just like you don't just go to the firearms store and pick up a gun and start shooting. Yeah. You need practice. You need to know what you're doing with the tool you're using, or else you should leave it alone. So,
exactly.
Ouija boards are probably like that. If those are real, then if you don't know what you're doing with them, you should probably leave them that alone.
Yeah, I completely agree. Has there been anything less? Because I think a lot of people are terrified of Ouija boards to begin with. Is there anything that shouldn't have been something scary that was, you felt like there was something off about it? Like a lot of times, like dolls, like they shouldn't be scary, but sometimes you come across them and you think there's something all right with that, or jewelry or furniture or just anything random. I've even heard of cars.
There's been a few things.
Car,
True.
I've never run into it with a car. I worked security for concerts and stuff a lot. I know there was one band that I worked security for, that one of their props was an antique electric chair. And being around that thing kind of made me uneasy. Which wasn't what I expected. I was, when I heard they had it, I was like, I'm gonna go see that. That sounds cool. Old antique electric chair, all the old cast iron fittings and all. It sounded cool. But when I got around it, I was just like, that's cool, but I think I've had enough of that.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd say I had some negative.
So
yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely some negative energy coming off of that thing.
Yeah.
It was just like, I think there are things like that with objects. Again, I don't know that you'd call that what would normally be an unthreatening object, but it's something that you would expect just to be like, okay, cool old chair. There's nothing. It should just be wood and iron but there is definitely a feeling attached to that thing.
You were talking about the Ouija board. I know that's just a lot of people. It's a form of divination. Like if you use a pendulum or tarot cards or any other tool. Have you ever used anything else like that, like tarot cards or pendulums or anything else that you had like a really weird experience, or had been in a seance that you've done with people as a kid, or have you ever done anything like that and had a strange experience that you want to tell?
I've never actually done a seance. Like I said, most of the stuff that I've come across has just been incidental, but it's enough to, make me think, okay, there is something there.
Right.
When you say ghost, I may not think, Casper the Friendly Ghost, your spirit with the sheet over it, but there's something there.
I agree. What about in all the places that you all went, these abandoned places and buildings and things? Did you ever go to like a cemetery looking around, just hanging, as with your friends, like checking it
Oh yeah,
out?
I go
Any
to
old
old
cemeteries?
cemeteries all the time. Oh, I
Those
mean
are my
old
favorite.
cemeteries all the time. There's one near me here in Detroit that I go through. Like the old mausoleums are cool, and some of the old headstones with really intricate design. But yeah, there's definitely spots in cemeteries that you can feel that energy,
Have you ever had anything really scary happen at a cemetery?
No,
Not really.
but then again, I don't scare easily, so.
I know. Have you ever seen? I know some people told too, like just in exploring cemeteries, they found some really cool like old headstones that said really wild things, or just something interesting, with the architecture or something that was said. Have you ever found anything cool at a cemetery like that, as far as a tombstone that was really unique?
Well, there's been some weird things that I've come across at cemeteries that have stories. Like I know there's a cemetery in Pontiac where there's this one headstone. They can't figure out why. They have straightened it like 50 times. And every time they straighten it, it tilts back to the exact same position that it used to be in.
Really?
Wow.
See, yeah, that's weird.
Hmm.
And nothing else around it does that. It's just a shift in that one stone.
Just that one stone.
Makes you wonder why, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Things like that. Can you think of anything else, David, that you wanted to ask him, or that you would want, or anything you wanted to follow up on that he said?
Did you ever get any uneasy feeling at a cemetery? I mean, they're one of my favorite places to go.
There are definitely certain areas in cemeteries where you can feel stuff like that. Not like uneasy enough that I had to leave, but there are definitely spots in cemeteries where you feel less at ease. Particularly the older cemeteries.
More around the older ones?
Yeah, definitely more around the older cemeteries.
Yeah.
The new ones that are just bunches of little ground level headstones set up, I don't tend to get much of that. It tends to be the ones where you have the old intricate mausoleums and all the different.
Yes.
Yeah.
They tend to have a lot more of that going on.
Right. I remember down in Houston, they had some real nice ones.
Yeah, I've heard there's some nice old ones around Houston. Around Waco, there's a couple of places where there's old family plots that are now, part of a church or something. Some of those have some interesting auras about them, but
Yeah, we've got some really interesting like family sites on even like farmland and in the back of the hollows around here, that some of the smaller cemeteries can be as creepy and have those feelings more than when they're really old than the big ones,
right.
But I know when I go travel, a lot of times I'll look at cemeteries when I travel, which is kind of weird, but there's some really interesting ones around Savannah and around New Orleans and around Salem, and
there's some weird stuff down around New Orleans.
yeah, there is, and it's really, and I actually
there's a couple of places in Tennessee that are kind of interesting too.
Yeah, I've been to some in Tennessee. Anytime that you get around, like going towards like Gettysburg and things, I think that even in the daytime, you have a feeling there around, sites. You feel it even in the daytime. So I mean,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I've caught pictures actually at cemeteries before. That's the only place I've ever been able to catch like actual pictures. One of them was when we were in Savannah. I'll try to post it on the group later, David. I've never posted that picture publicly. I've sent people individually, but not publicly. But it was the middle of the day, and it was at Savannah at a cemetery, and I kept taking pictures. It was like I felt like something was there, but I didn't see it. But then when we were
Yeah.
in pictures, you can clearly see it's like an old man, and he's like hunched over, and he's walking. You can see him like it's an apparition in the middle of the day in the picture. You can see it. And my mom freaked out. She's like, "Oh my gosh!" But I'll post that picture later. Um, but around here, I know the creepiest tombstone I've seen around here is my aunt had a farm down around Berea, Kentucky, and when they bought the farm, it had like a pond on it, real far back in the field. And when you went back there, there was a small like family cemetery near the pond, and there was one tree there by, and it had a gate by the tree. And when you walked in, there was one like tombstone by itself by the gate when you were going in. And the tombstone, it was a man. I forgot what the name was on it, but the tombstone. And since then, I thought it was the only tombstone when I was growing up that said this because I'd never seen it before, and it creeped me out. But since then, I have seen other tombstones with the same saying on them. So it must have been something they put on gravestones back then. I don't know, but it said. Remember, friend, as you walk by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you will be. Prepare for death and follow me. And I, as a kid, thought that was the creepiest thing I had ever seen in my life in a cemetery. And would you want that on your tombstone? I mean, I thought that was really odd. But I've seen that on stones since then. So it must have been a poem they put on stones back then. I don't know where it came from. But yeah, a lot of those smaller, like backwoods cemeteries have stuff, I think, there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, let me throw a plug out there for Fear Fest real quick. I plan on going to some of them cemeteries there around New Orleans when we go down there in October.
Yeah, I
If you get a chance, Chris, you got to make it, man.
He doesn't know anything about
gonna
it,
be
I don't think. Do you know about it?
Yeah, I have no idea about that. So
they're having a festival for it's like for basement paranormal stuff. It's at New Orleans. It's going to be this year, and it's going to be really good. I think. I mean, if you look at the guests, there's some posts on the page on the Hanks and Hollers page about it, and I can send you some stuff just direct message if you want me to. There's information on it and stuff. But it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, sounds good. Send me some information.
And I'm looking forward to it. And as many people as you know that can go, I think you ought to try to go. And not only that, but if you want to plug Hope Paranormal and your other groups, David, because David also is actually a part of some groups overseas as well. So I'll let him put a plug in for everybody else there too.
Yeah, but now with the Fear Fest, it's going to be a 3-day event, but basically a Mardi Gras for the paranormal.
Oh, that sounds cool.
There'll be ghost hunts every night, a concert a couple nights, and
I think they're even going to have like they're going to do have a voodoo ceremony that you could be like not necessarily a part of, but be there and witness it, and like if you want to see how that goes and stuff, and they're going to have some different things like that going on just to kind of learn about.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of good people are going to be there, and there's going to be people from all around the world there.
And they've got some bands coming too. I think. Yeah, and they're going to have some bands there too. I think they're doing a concert, aren't they, David?
Right. 2 of the nights. I know.
So they're going to have some good music there too.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Where's it at?
New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
It's in October.
And
that sounds cool.
But heck yeah. I've already got my vacation.
Check it out.
And what's the name of the Scottish group that you help with, David?
Pardon me?
Your other group that you help with, not other than Dark Hope Paranormal, you help with.
Road to Discovery.
Yes, if you wanted to, what all they have going on right now? They have a show too, don't they?
Yeah, but I'm not I'm not sure.
Okay. They have a
The way my
Facebook
past
page
week's
though.
been.
If they have a Facebook page though, if anybody wants to follow them, it's called Road to Discovery, and David's part of that group and their podcast, and they have some really good shows as well. And then there's Dark Hope Paranormal, which is David's group if you want to follow them on Facebook, and they have a lot of really good posts. And then, like I said, I'm part of Newsome Paranormal, and Newsome Paranormal has a Facebook page as well. And I know that Raymond, that's over Newsome Paranormal, they have a lot of things planned this year, like ghost hunts and different things. And we're going to be going to, with Newsome Paranormal, we're going to be going to Octagon Hall. And that's going to be part of, I think, the Global Ghost Hunt that's coming on up, part of that. And we're going to be doing that in April, I believe it is. So,
yes, check out the Global Ghost Hunt. Sorry to override.
Octagon Hall is down in Kentucky, but it's super, a lot of activity there. And everybody that's gone, like the last time they did a ghost hunt there, they said from the time that they got there, I think they were there like 16 hours, but from the time they got there to when they left, it was nonstop, like, stuff. Like they had a cabinet trying to open on them. They heard chains in the basement. One of the ladies looked out the window and saw like an actual apparition of a lady by a tree, and like they had a lot of stuff happen just to be there in that short of a time. You know what I mean? So, but we're going there in April, so that'll be recorded and uploaded as well. And I'll share that too. I'm sure it'll go on at Newsome Paranormal, and then I'll share it out too. So, but
that sounds cool.
We're going on an hour though, and I can tell Chris is rubbing his eyes. We pour him out.
I just got smoke in my eye.
I was afraid we had to get you up early. We were wearing you out.
I put my cigarette out and got smoke right in my eye.
I thought we're making him sleepy here. So long. But
no, I'm just trying not to look too silly over here, trying to wipe my eye because it's water and smoke from my cigarette.
Hey, you look great, and you've done great. I told him it's not even normal. I said, we just want to talk to people about their experiences. Everybody's got them. And like I said, I think it adds so much credibility to the field to have people that get on here and they're honest. Like if it's something you have never experienced, you said, no, I don't know I have never had that happen. But that's much more credible than people that say I saw a demon in 5 different houses and been possessed 6 times, and I mean, you hear people that say that, and you think that's a little, so, but but we'll get ready and close that down here then. Unless, is there anything else you can think of to ask, David, or anything that we've forgotten? I don't know.
No, just never give up hope, because you're not alone.
That's right. And we definitely appreciate you, Chris, okay? And
not a problem.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and you too, David. And it's been great, and I appreciate you, okay?
All right, you guys have a great day.
Okay, talk to y'all later.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.